I just walked out of Joker, Folie, Deux, if that's even how you pronounce it. Boy, do I have a lot to say. Joker Folie Deux is the follow up to the billion-dollar spectacle Joker, directed and written by Todd Phillips, with a co writer's credit from one Scott Silver, whom also helped write the first one. This stars the critically acclaimed actor Joaquin Phoenix, bringing on the heavily popular Lady Gaga in the role of Harleen Quinzel, and you also have a supporting cast, including the likes of Brendan Gleeson and Catherine Keener. I honestly had no expectations going into this movie whatsoever. I managed to see it a day after it released because the official release date was yesterday, October 4th. It is, as of recording, October 5th. The reviews to this movie, both critically and from the audiences, have been unkind. This is a drastically big difference from movie 1 to movie 2 in terms of reception. I am here to tell you people, for anyone listening or anyone who cares, I think it's actually kind of brilliant. I liked it. I liked it a lot, really, and I genuinely kind of mean that. But before I get into any of that, I'm going to do a celebratory thing that I think might help me express myself a little bit more. So I'm just going to just give a small toast shot of Jack Daniels to one Todd Phillips for directing and pulling off a sequel that frankly wasn't exactly warranted, but still made, because Warner Brothers clearly dumped a ton of money in front of him and said, please make us a sequel, and he went, okay. And he did. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. So without further ado, let's get into Joker Folie Deux. Cheers to you, Todd Phillips, and everyone else involved. Okay, so, as I said, I quite enjoyed this movie. I wasn't really expecting to. And granted, I'm not even saying that predicating all of my feelings on the online conversation surrounding it. I haven't seen anyone else in my circles really talk about it in spoilery fashion yet. I've seen a handful of reviews from people that I do trust, but in terms of like verbal video talking reviews or anything like that, I have kind of strayed away from it. As I mentioned before, obviously the audience score and the critic score for this film is just straight up unkind. The cinema score is a D, which is just not good. And I'm kind of baffled at the reason why, or the reasons why. I don't know. I don't know why this film is getting so chastised and lambasted, because it's, Todd Phillips and Scott Silver coming back again. You've got music and the score performed by Hildur Guðnadóttir. I don't get it. I mean, if I do have issues with it personally, like, well, not in a personal way, but just, from my perspective, I don't think the musical aspect completely works, but then again, that could be due to the fact that it might just be by design. As I mentioned, the film stars Joaquin Phoenix reprising the role for the first time he's ever reprised a role ever as Arthur Fleck. The film introduces Lady Gaga as Harleen Quinzel, known by her ego in this film, Lee, as she's been called in this film. And I gotta say, like, being a Batman fan, yeah, I was probably going to go watch this movie one way or the other. I was kind of hesitant about it, given some of the stuff, just all of the talk surrounding this film before it came out has just been seriously unkind. And after coming out of the movie, I don't really get it. I mean, I can kind of understand where people are coming from in terms of the ending, but like I said, one thing that really kind of stuck out to me that wasn't exactly great was the singing and musical cues, but that very well could be attributed to the fact that the characters who are doing a large portion of the musical stuff are Gaga and Phoenix. And that could be because the characters they're playing aren't exactly meant to be, top level performers in terms of vocal cords and singing and all that. I think naturally by design it could have just been intentionally bad. So I don't know that this element in this film necessarily worked, but maybe it did, and it was supposed to do its job. And I would also posit that I do think that taking Arthur's mental state and having him have the Joker be, another personality inside of him, having this whole movie kind of predicated on that situation of the movie is also predicated on his trial and in the events from the first film. This is literally a direct sequel to Joker. You see the consequences of his actions from that first movie, and I think that also could be a reason why people are just so turned off from this movie, because due to the marketing kind of made it feel like it was going to be this almost not necessarily a team up, but like a bad romance, in that you have Joaquin and Gaga's Harley and Joker maybe kind of wreaking havoc across Arkham, and that's not at all what this movie was. And maybe the courtroom stuff was a little bit less exposed through marketing. I can see why they marketed the movie the way they did. It is a complete and total subversion of what the movie actually is, because the movie heavily is about Arthur's actions and consequences from the first film, and a large portion of it is based on the court sequences that we do see in a lot of the trailers. I believe the actor's name who plays Harvey Dent, who's introduced in this movie, Harry Lawton, I believe. Harry Lawty, there we go. This movie takes its creative liberties with some very iconic characters, i.e. Joker, Harley, and to a lesser extent, Harvey Dent. These are not your traditional supervillains. These are not characters that are from the comic books. These are completely different versions. Matter of fact, I would say that Joker and Joker Folie do 100% fall into that Elseworlds category, 100%, because this is by and far the biggest stretch you could ever take with a fictional character in terms of loose adaptation. Because while the film and while the character that Arthur Fleck is touches on certain elements that are, pristine and very, tied to who the Joker is, this film does not go out of its way to make the Joker some kind of giant crime boss at the end of it, or some kind of superbly psychotic killer. No, this movie continues to emphasize the craziness and the lunacy that involves someone who is severely mentally damaged and traumatized from past transgressions and, having a traumatic childhood and being brought up in a world and being neglected by society. Like, the film does carry over some themes from the first film, but I would also just say that the first film had an emphasis on Arthur wanting to be a comedian, and that kind of played a part in his head. He had this idea that he was going to be this comedic presence and everyone was going to love him, but in reality, he was just this unfortunate soul who got beaten down at every turn he had. In this film, the psychosis comes from not necessarily wanting, but it's a new added element of, oh, well, I guess my life is kind of like a musical now, because, I got the opportunity to be a part of this musical bit inside of Arkham, and this is where I met this girl who likes me for, who I am on the inside, but it's not really him, it's the Joker. That's the thing that this movie also does. It really presents the idea of, is Arthur Fleck Joker, or is Joker a manifestation, another personality that Arthur has created to deal with his trauma? I think that's actually really fucking brilliant. Honestly, look, I don't know what I was expecting walking into this movie, but I walked out of it having a hell of a good time. Maybe, okay, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but seriously, like, the first movie opens up with Arthur getting his own sign stolen by a bunch of degenerates, and then they fucking take it and smack the shit out of him and the sign breaks. I laughed. Probably shouldn't have, but I did. This film opens up with an animated bit where it's literally Arthur it's almost like it's what he sees his life as. It's a Warner Brothers cartoon. It's a Looney Tune cartoon. Literally, it opens up just like a Warner Brothers animated Looney Tune cartoon. The Warner Brothers logo comes up. You have like an old Looney Tunes-esque Merry Melodies opening where it's and like the title of what they call it is Me and My Shadow, and you see like a cartoonish version of Arthur as the Joker, his version of the Joker, and his shadow, and the little bit is the shadow in him kind of having it out back and forth before eventually some police come and beat the snot out of Arthur after the shadow kind of takes over. It's really a display of what is to come from this movie in terms of like Arthur sees himself as the Joker, but the Joker really is the shadow that is following him and has overtaken his life in a certain respect. And then the movie opens up with him in Arkham. And that's another thing that I actually it kept eating at me this entire time. Because at the end of the first movie, Arthur is locked in Arkham and he is talking to another psychiatrist, and Arkham is white, it's pristine, he's in very, not inmate clothing, but you've got oh man, what's the word I'm looking for here? He's very much a patient. He looks like a freaking patient. In this movie, they treat Arkham State Hospital as more of a prison. And that's the thing where I was like, this doesn't add up. Is that intentional? Is that just kind of a continuity goof? I'm not really sure, but that was one thing that I absolutely noticed walking out of this movie. I was like, okay, I liked a lot of what I saw, but the overall setting of Arkham, it does not match up from movie 1 to movie 2. But then again, who knows? The ending of that movie very well could have also just been inside his head, but I find that very hard to believe. That said, Brendan Gleeson's character, Jackie, is just this horrendous guard who treats Arthur like a punching bag of sorts. Him and the other guards, they mock Arthur for wanting to be a comedian. They say, hey, tell us a joke. That's a consistent thing through this movie. But the thing is, I don't hate that. I thought it worked because it continues the trend from the first movie that Arthur is just continuously mocked and bullied by people around him. And that's another thing I would also just say. I think Joaquin Phoenix was smart in just carrying through this performance from movie 1 to movie 2 in his portrayal of Arthur Fleck as just this damaged, broken individual who has dealt with some severe, long-lived, gestated trauma that has now manifested itself into, what is this version of the Joker. And, man, by the end of this movie, it's not necessarily retreading on the first movie steps, but it more so reinforces the idea that Arthur Fleck is a human being. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people really misunderstand when they see the word Joker and they see the DC logo and they see this movie. I think they're just clinging to this notion that, oh, this is going to be another version of the Clown Prince of Crime. And that's not it at all. We're not doing the Clown Prince of Crime here. This is a man who is suffering from some very, very severe mental issues and some very traumatic childhood upbringing. So much so that it has affected his very existence as an adult. So much so by the end of the movie, he's finally come to terms with, no, I am this really awful individual, and the Joker is indeed a thing that I used to, hide myself from reality, but also front myself into this reality and accept it in a way that worked for me, in a way that I feel almost safe, but at the same time, I'm doing these really awful, horrible things because this is just how far gone I am from the real world. So much so that if I really want to be seen, I have to do these really awful, horrendous things, even though these people may have mocked me, may have disturbed my patience, may have just, bullied me, mocked me, made fun of me, beat me, you name it. They did not really deserve what their comeuppance was, even though in some twisted, justifiable way, I do think that those 3 people on the subway deserve to die. In some wicked, twisted way, I should have killed my mother. In some awful way, the big gent from the first film absolutely deserved to get stabbed in the eye with some scissors. And then, of course, Murray, yeah, I felt totally justified in killing him on live television. And this attracts Lady Gaga's Lee to Arthur. And here's the fucking big twist of it all. In case you haven't noticed, this is a spoiler review of this film. Lady Gaga's Lee, Harleen Quinzel Lee, she starts off telling Arthur, like, oh yeah, I'm in here because, you know, I set my apartment on fire, my mother died, I should have killed her, da-da-da, my father died in a car accident. She lied about all of it. She's from the Upper West Side, she's not from the same area that Arthur is, and she voluntarily put herself inside of Arkham just to meet him. This whole relationship, this whole Joker-Harley relationship is a complete 180 from what people are probably used to. Like, the element of her being attracted to him is still present. The reasoning behind it also present. But how it unfolds, the whole lying, the whole deceptive nature of it all, only to just get him to be Joker again. And then by the end of it, when Arthur really embraces it and says, yeah, you know, Joker was never a thing. It was really just all me. The big twist is when she decides to just completely shut him out and says, this was all a fantasy and you gave up on it. I'm done. Goodbye. We're through. That was kind of strange because more often than not, in traditional continuity, depending on what book or series you're watching or playing, Harley usually leaves the Joker because of some abusive element from him. This is a completely different circumstance in which she goes, oh, you don't want to do this anymore? That was the fun part. I only really wanted Joker. I don't care about Arthur Fleck. Really reinforcing the idea that no one actually gives a damn about Arthur Fleck. They only give a shit about the Joker. Which is kind of sad, if I'm being brutally honest. But I would also say, their relationship throughout the movie, their romance, the scenes they had together, it was twisted in a dark way, but you understood it. Because these are two very clearly damaged individuals who found some sense of kind of really awkward trauma bonding, even though she was lying about it. It was just a toxic relationship through and through, but not in the traditional sense that people are really comfortable with in terms of the Joker-Harley relationship presented in other mediums. This was a completely different take on it. And I liked it. Weirdly enough, I liked it. Not because I think it's a great showcase of a relationship. Fuck no! This is a toxic relationship, 100%. This is honestly one of the most intricate displays of how a person can manipulate someone and bring them down and fundamentally change who they are just so they can have them, follow them around and be with them. And then when they don't get what they want in the end, they're just so quick to be like, nope, goodbye. Don't want nothing to do with you. It was grotesque, but it was real. And that's the thing I think that really sold it, was just how just visceral and very just toxic that whole idea of, I'm gonna lie to you because I like your other version of you and I want to be with that version of you. But when you give that up, that is no longer, like, you're only attracted to one side of the person. You're not attracted to the whole being. And that's a very common theme in today's society that I think a lot of people are not willing to accept. But here we are. No, I think this movie is actually a lot more brilliant than what the online trades and critics and even some of the audiences are positing online. I actually think this is kind of brilliant. Granted, again, my criticisms really largely stem from the musical aspect of this, the, minor continuity difference between the look of Arkham. But I would also say that, even the supporting cast played their part well. Like, Brendan Gleeson playing a jackass officer inside Arkham sold it really well. Like, he was like, Arthur's pretend friend. He's like, hey, tell me a joke, I'll give you a cigarette. And then, like, even at the slightest hint of Arthur showing any kind of, like, affection or, equal, like, hey, thanks, pal. Brendan Gleeson's character just treats him like dog shit. And I'm like, well, that's very apt for people who look at Arthur. And then you've got the other side with Catherine Keener's character, Marianne Stewart, who's Arthur's lawyer, trying to help Arthur prove that, hey, no, you're a damaged person. This Joker persona is not you. It was a thing created from your trauma. So much so that by the time the trial gets to the point where they're hearing from witnesses, Arthur's so far gone and manipulated by Harley, where he's just like, yeah, no, you're fired. And he literally turns the courtroom, he turns his trial into a circus, into a media circus. It's very telling and very relatable to some certain situations that I don't feel making the live comparison to. But I will just say that it was chilling, awkward, and almost kind of funny in a really, like, dark way. And even, Harry Lottie as Harvey Dent, like, he definitely is just of the mind of, no, this dude knew full well what he was doing. He knew full well exactly the kind of crimes he was committing. He does not suffer from any kind of personality disorders. He was fully aware of his actions, and he should be tried. He should be punished. He should get the death penalty. I'll say, like, he sold it well. Like, Harry Lottie did a pretty solid job as this version of Harvey Dent, even though it wasn't, like a corrupt, official working the district attorney's office. It wasn't anything remotely close to any other version of Harvey Dent. He did a fine job. He did exactly what he was set to do. I think that's fine. There was even some surprise reprisals of, Zazie Beetz, as well as, oh man, who was the actor who played it doesn't even say here. Darn. Anyway, here we go. Lee Gill is Gary Puddles. Lee Gill and Zazie Beetz, they even reprised their roles from this movie, from the first film, and they are brought in to speak on, what they witnessed in regards to Arthur's actions from the first film. And I will just say that, man, there is a scene where Joaquin Phoenix and Lee Gill have an exchange, and it is almost terrifying and heartbreaking all at once to witness their conversation in that courtroom, because Arthur is in full Joker makeup, and Gary Puddles, like little Gary, I don't really feel comfortable addressing him in any other way, because it's the best way I could say it. Their exchange in that room, Arthur tries to justify, like, I was good to you, yeah, I killed dude with a pair of scissors, and Gary's like, dude, I can't even sleep. I can't even go back to work. You terrify me. You have fundamentally changed my life in a bad way. And Arthur's just flabbergasted at his decisions. Overall, I actually quite enjoyed this movie. And now let's get to the ending, right? Apparently, people are having a giant hiss fit over this ending. Well, as I mentioned earlier, when there's a bomb that goes off during the verdict, in which Arthur is found guilty of everything. He's grabbed and saved by two people who are dressed up in Joker getup, and like, you did it, man, you did it. We're gonna get you out. We're gonna blow this whole city to high hell. And then Arthur's like, what? No, I don't want to do that. Gets out of the car and runs away. Eventually makes it to the steps from the first movie, and he sees Lee. And at this point, she's just like, you're not the Joker. You gave up on the fantasy. Goodbye, Arthur, and just walks away and leaves him in his sadness. I was just surprised. I was really surprised, because he was really just banking on this idea. It's this common thing I've heard a lot, in that don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that's exactly what Arthur did with Lee. He thought by putting all his eggs in that basket with her, that if he were to break out or get out somehow, she'd still be okay with him and what he was about, and even if he didn't want to be the Joker anymore. Because there is a point towards the climax of the movie, after he has that conversation where he lets the defense rest or whatever, and he's just, like, after he mocks the guards in Arkham 2, there's a point where he just gets the absolute shit beat out of him, and he just kind of realizes, like, if this is what this means, then I can't accept, I can no longer do this. I accept who I am, and I have to face my consequences accordingly. And so, when he's at those stairs and Lee's like, you gave up the fantasy, you're not Joker, I want nothing to do with you. It's it's heartbreaking in the sense of like, your lawyer was right. She straight played you for the fool that you are. You know, like, dude, you should have seen that coming and you didn't. So then he's brought back to Arkham facing his death sentence, waiting for the death penalty to hit him. And he gets a visitor. He's walked through a corridor and someone comes up, and this one character, the camera would stay on this character periodically throughout the film. It's almost like he was a fan of Arthur's, weirdly enough. And this dude tells Arthur a joke and then proceeds to stab him in the gut and says, "Thanks, pal." And then you just see Arthur kind of collapse and fall. And in that moment, he has one last kind of like in his head hallucination of like his relationship with Harley. And they're in, you know, Joker and Harley get up from that scene where they're treating it like a live show, like the Murray show. But at some point earlier in the film, this is foreshadowed, they're doing a duet. And then Harley takes it for the solo, and he kind of mocks her for it. And they both go, well, let's just give them what they want. And then the camera pans over. Harley's got a gun, shoots him in the chest. And he's just like, well, what did you do that for? At the end, we revisit that scene, and he's literally singing, you know, let's make a mountain, let's build a mountain. And he's basically just sitting in this idea of like, okay, well, the show's over. I'm done. This is no longer a thing. I'm through. And this is almost in a way like Todd Phillips going, yeah, no, I'm done. I'm not doing any more movies. I don't want to do this anymore. This is the story I wanted to tell with Arthur Fleck. We are putting a straight pin in it. Nothing more is coming from this. However, the same person who stabbed Arthur is seen in the background. It's through like a faded lens, but you see him like carve a smile through with the shank or the knife that he cut Arthur with, and you just watch Arthur die while this guy is cackling in the back, kind of alluding to the idea of like, yeah, no, Arthur's dead, but the idea of the Joker in a weird twisted way kind of lives on. But also, I would also just really kind of just reinforce that it really does feel like Todd Phillips going, I had a story to tell with Arthur Fleck. This is the end of it. This is where it all comes to an end. Between the music from Hildur Gudnadar, the direction, the cinematography, the performances, I liked it. I really liked Joker Folie à Deux. I did not really expect to, but I didn't really have any high expectations going into it. Because, did the first one really need a sequel? No. Was this a well-made sequel? I would say yes. I'm of the minority. I kind of acknowledge that, because clearly everyone else is like, this movie is a pile. This movie is garbage. It's hollow. It's shallow. It adds nothing to the first film. I disagree. I think this film, honestly and truly, builds off of the back of the first one and ties everything up in a funny little bow. Maybe not a funny little bow. Maybe more like a bloody little bow. But yeah. No, I liked it. I liked it more than I expected to. There are some things that I do have kind of an issue with. Like I said, you know, the musical stuff didn't quite work for me in the same way that, you know, the comedian in his head did for the first film. And again, like the setting of Arkham, I was like, this doesn't really add up, but whatever. Other than that, again, beautiful visuals. I'm also a sucker for Looney Tunes, so that intro bit where it was him as a cartoon, I said, what the fuck, but in a funny way. Like, I thought it was genuinely kind of clever. Overall, I really liked this movie. I was just as shocked as anyone to say those words to the people that I've said it to. I really enjoyed it. I thought Joaquin gave a great performance. I thought Gaga was great with what she did. His supporting cast they had for this was good. Joker Folie à Deux is, in my opinion, a solid follow-up. I would also say, the first film, you can tell it's a $60 million budget movie. This film, you can absolutely tell it's a $200 million movie. They make no bones about that. 100%. This is a $200 million movie, and it shows 100%. But, you know, I liked it. I actually really liked it. I don't know if I liked it more than the first one. I would say that the first movie is probably a much tighter, well-made movie. But I do think that this one is actually a solid follow-up, all things considered. But, you know, hey, let me know in the comments, did you like or dislike Joker Folie à Deux? Let me know how you feel about the movie. Did you like Joaquin's performance as Arthur Fleck? How'd you feel about Lady Gaga? Please let me know. Do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in to my first movie review. Hopefully we can do some more like this. But yeah, this has been my review of Joker Folie à Deux.